This video will, at points, almost seem like a lucid dream. A game that, if you're not aware of it, will baffle you completely. And I suspect that some will still have the reaction, even as Takeshi's Challenge has become gradually more famous as one weird trip of a game. And you can even play it in English now, allowing people from outside of Japan to truly see just what it's capable of. When Japanese magazines make their list of the top shit games, or kusoges of all time, this is usually at or near the top. Hell, it's one of the most well-known Famicom games, and one of the most infamous. Takeshi's Challenge is something else. And of course it's a licensed game. Not just based on, but made with close input from, well, something of a man. I have always wanted to cover Takeshi's Challenge, of that there is no doubt, but oh boy is it going to be a difficult one. And that's just because of the fricking game. Anyway, in order to actually try and understand Takeshi's Challenge, you need to start with the man himself. The Takeshi of the title is, of course, Takeshi Kitano, also known as Beat Takeshi. In the West you may well know him for various things. He's the titular star of the almighty Takeshi's Castle, or Most Extreme Elimination Challenge if you're American. A show filled with physical tests and comedic serious injuries, as 100 contestants aim to defeat Count Takeshi and his evil army. If not that, you probably know him from films. He's had quite famous roles, including simply Kitano in Battle Royale. And hell, there's way more to cover here, but it needs to wait a little. He was also in Johnny Mnemonic, believe it or not, and he'll be in that new Ghost in the Shell film that's on the way. In Japan, he's famous for other reasons. Not only has he been a star since the 70s, he's been one of Japan's biggest comedic stars for the past 40 years. Kitano got his start as part of a manzai duo with his friend Beat Kiyoshi. They were known as 2-Beat, and that's where the Beat Takeshi name comes from. Manzai duos were known largely for insulting each other in rapid-fire style, and consisted of a straight man and a funny man. You know, like Morecambe and Wise, only with sillier costumes. 2-Beat were famous for being quite savage and sarcastic even for groups of the day, an act where nothing was above being insulted. Kitano went out on his own at the start of the 80s, becoming and remaining a very popular comedian on Japanese TV, and continuing on in much the same vein. The original Takeshi's Castle is just one of many very popular shows starring Takeshi Kitano, and it's probably the best one. I mean, the majority of Takeshi's TV shows are total trash television. Japanese light entertainment that's kind of the equivalent of a Noel Edmonds or what have you. Only imagine if Noel Edmonds did Mr. Blobby and all that, while also being one of the most respected film directors on the entire planet. It is hard to equate all of this good-natured, kooky fun with the other side of Takeshi, the one he's undoubtedly more well known for in the West: his films. Takeshi Kitano fell into directing films almost by accident with 1989's Violent Cop. A scheduling conflict meant that long-time Yakuza film director Kenji Fukusaku, who would later direct Takeshi in Battle Royale, had to leave the project, and Kitano ended up in the chair instead. It was a generic Yakuza film at first, but Kitano changed just about everything. There is no comedy here. Violent Cop is an utterly fatalistic film, almost a Japanese Dirty Harry, but with an even grimmer ending. Kitano continued to make films in the same vein, stories based on Yakuza, apparently inspired in many ways by his experiences in Yakuza 1 Manzai clubs and, well, just meeting lots of Yakuza as you do, but told with a certain knack that separated it from many other Yakuza films. And as it turned out, he was kind of a natural. In Japan, where he's obviously famous for different reasons, people did not know how to take to these films. They were trained to laugh at Kitano's very appearance, after all. But we loved these films in the West. 1993's Sonatine saw him win more acclaim in the West and get name-dropped by Quentin Tarantino, and we continue to love him today for films like Zatoichi and Outrage. He has also at times produced some quieter, moodier pieces, films like Kikujiro or A Scene at the Sea, plus the odd comedy like Kids Return that we don't really tend to get quite as much. We like the more action stuff. But then there is the film where it all came together, 1997's Hanabi, or Fireworks. Another Yakuza piece, but filled with personal touches and a lyricism entirely of his own. One of the most celebrated and famous films in Asian cinema, if you're Western anyway. Although it was the film that finally made the Japanese public accept Takeshi as a serious film director, purely because it was that damn good. And it's all from the same person who does things like this and continues to do so to this day. Like I said, it can be tricky to match the two. Dry and sarcastic sometimes, utterly zany others, mean-spirited often, an artist and court jester. He's Takeshi Kitano. And in 1986, he decided to try his hand at a video game. Now, the story goes that Taito had a license to make a game based around Takeshi Kitano, and that once Takeshi got wind of it, he decided to become heavily involved in the production process. In doing so, he became one of, if not the first ever celebrity to be heavily involved with the design of their own video game. Takeshi's role could be described, in a way, as a level designer, and he worked fast, apparently designing just about the whole game over the course of one night in a bar while he was getting smashed into oblivion on sake, and a couple of people from Taito were recording everything that he came up with. Leaving aside ideas that the Famicom wasn't capable of realising, or ideas that were simply not suitable for the system or indeed anyone, everything in Takeshi's challenge comes from the mind of Takeshi Kitano. He didn't want a traditional game, he wanted something thoroughly different. And, well, that's what he got. Perhaps the first question is why? Why would Taito go into such a direction? These are the folks who helped to make video games what they were. You'd have thought they would be more traditionalist. But as I said, Takeshi was pretty much the first celebrity to ever get so involved with a video game, and he was a huge star. The presence of Takeshi Kitano was virtually guaranteed to make the game a big seller no matter what was on the cartridge, and so, heck, why not run with it? It's odd, but the one single game that I frequently see Takeshi's challenge compared to is the also quite odd Frankie Goes to Hollywood on the C64. Although make no mistake, Frankie is a much, much better game. There is, however, one little problem right off the bat. Takeshi Kitano has an outspoken hatred for almost everything electronic, including video games. He hates mobile phones, social media, email, computers in general, and pretty much anything that interferes with traditional Japanese values. Basically, he's a grumpy old man and has always been a grumpy old man. There are few people who you would think less suitable to design in a video game than Takeshi freaking Kitano, which in many ways is why the game itself is so interesting. Beyond that, there's not much to speculate on. The actual process of development is shrouded in mystery, although it didn't last long. According to the very first episode of Game Center CX, virtually no one who was working at Taito when that was filmed in 2003 worked on Takeshi's challenge. Perhaps not surprising, seeing as the team would have only consisted of a few people, and in any case no one has ever been credited with the creation of the game aside from Takeshi himself. Even the person who wrote the strategy guide that a lot of people ended up complaining about is apparently in the freaking ground. There are many things about the game that are shrouded in mystique and forever will be. Maybe even that whole story about Kitano designing the game while pissed of an evening is just the stuff of legend, something to add to it. All these things do certainly help to make the game more enticing, but like I said, it was a short film. It's got Takeshi Kitano's name on it, therefore it's going to be a hit. However, one thing could have damaged the game's steady approach to becoming a smash. In December of 1986, mere days before the release of the game, Takeshi Kitano was caught in a scandal. Pissed off that a gossip mag had accused him of an extramarital affair, he went in their office one day and basically started punching people. Such incidents can be quite damaging indeed in Japan. However, the upshot of it all was that Takeshi was banned from appearing on TV for a few months, and that was about it. Takeshi's challenge was still released as planned. I'm now going to obviously put off playing the thing for a bit longer by saying that if you've ever seen an episode of Takeshi's Castle or MXC when the Count is wearing a big papier-mâché head, That's from the time when Kitano was banned. It's not him under it. And that's about when Takeshi's Challenge was released. Isn't that interesting? Okay, I can put it off no longer. Here goes. Takeshi's Challenge is best described as a side-scrolling series of vignettes where you play a nameless and very upbeat salaryman who has decided, at last, to change his life. You do this by making a whole load of frankly baffling decisions. There is no official NES or Famicom game that offers anything even remotely like what Takeshi's Challenge brings to the table, and the only real way to show that is to go through, well, as much of the game as one can stand. And does that music loop annoy you yet? Good, you'll be hearing this loop a lot, and it's almost designed to piss you off and remain in your head forever. I should note that the game can be played in English thanks to an excellent translation by Kinlike, available at onepacking.net. It's essential if you want to try the game, as unless you know Japanese the game will be virtually impossible to complete. And frankly it's a lot more fun this way too. Anyway, once you're in the game, oh actually forget about the game, Takeshi's Challenge can kill you on the freaking password screen if you happen to get the code wrong. You can even softlock the game on the password screen, forcing a reset. That's the level we're at here. Anyway, once you're actually in the game, you have several things to do. They must be done in a very specific order, and they defy all kinds